Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Undisputed 3 Redemption in English, then you must like this video. If you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Undisputed 3 Redemption. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it all. Interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I'm going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film. And I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film storyline, star-cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. Undisputed 3 Redemption is a 2010 American action film directed by Isaac Florentine and starring Scott Adkins, Mykel Shannon Jenkins, Mark Ivanir, and Hristo Shopov. It is the sequel to Undisputed 2 Last Man Standing 2007 and the third installment overall in the Undisputed franchise. The movie's events take place several years chronologically after the events Last Man Standing. Plot: years after his defeat by George Iceman Chambers, Yuri Boyka, now a prison janitor, hears about the Prison Spets Competition, PSC, an inter-prison fighting tournament offering a chance at early release. Boyka trains privately to recover from his knee injury and challenges the current PSC champion, Vladimir Saikov, defeating him and becoming the Russian representative. At Gorgon Prison in Georgia, Boyka joins a group of international fighters. They face harsh conditions while Colombian fighter Raul Dolor Quiñones receives special treatment and drugs. Boyka clashes with American fighter Jericho Turbo Jones, but they eventually develop trust and train together. Boyka learns that the tournament is fixed for profit and confronts the organizers with the help of mob bosses Gaga and Gio Farnati. Boyka and Turbo advance in the tournament, along with Dolor and Brazilian fighter Rodrigo Silva. Turbo and Boyka are thrown into solitary confinement after a fight, but are released due to their manager's influence. Boyka realizes the managers only care about their profit and plans to defeat Dolor. During the semifinals, Boyka wins against Silva and offers him respect. The organizers arrange for Turbo to be beaten by guards, pushing Boyka to plan an escape. They fight the guards, escape, and Boyka returns to face Dolor alone. Dolor takes the lead, exploiting Boyka's weak knee. However, Boyka adapts by using a blood-soaked pad as a brace and employs a new fighting style. He defeats Dolor, ruining the manager's bets. Farnati kills Rezo but is shot by the warden. Boyka is not freed due to Turbo's escape, but Turbo rescues him from execution. They meet Gaga, who reveals he bet on Boyka all along. Boyka and Turbo part ways, vowing to have a future match. Boyka walks towards freedom with the money, while Turbo reveals his real name as Jericho. They part on good terms, and Boyka laughs joyfully. Cast: Scott Adkins as Yuri Boyka, Russian fighter and protagonist. Mykel Shannon Jenkins as Jericho Turbo Jones, the hot-headed American fighter. Mark Ivanir as Gaga, Russian mafia boss, and he represents Boyka. Hristo Shopov as Kus, warden of the Gorgon prison in Tbilisi, Georgia. Robert Costanzo as Gio Farnati, Italian-American mafia boss, and he represents Turbo. Marco Zaror as Raul Dolor Quiñones, Colombian fighter and enforcer of Cali Cartel. Vernon Dobchev as Rezo, Georgian mafia boss, and he represents Dolor. Velislav Pavlov as chief guard. Nikolai Surov as announcer. Esteban Cueto as Vladimir Saikov, the dominant fighter at the prison Boyka was being held at, would have become the Russian competitor if Boyka did not challenge him. Plamen Manasiev as lead parole board manager. Valentin Ganev as Markov, warden of the Chornya Cholmny prison in Russia. Stefan Shtarev as sportsbook clerk. Dimo Dimov as Gaga's bodyguard. Yordan Zahariev as referee. Pavel Doichev as referee. Latif Crowder as Rodrigo Silva, Brazilian fighter who uses capoeira. Ilram Choi as Chai Lam, North Korean fighter who uses taekwondo. He is easily eliminated by Dolor. Anton Trendafilov as Old Waterman. Ivan Zaharov as musician. Nikolay Petrov as musician. Kirill Efremov as guard number 1. Michael Baral as casino manager. Vladimir Bonev as businessman, uncredited. Dimitar Doichinov as Andrei Krates, uncredited. Croatian fighter who is defeated by Turbo. Borislav Ilyev as prison guard. Trajan Milanov Troy as John DuPont, uncredited. French fighter who is defeated by Boyka. Radislav Parvanov as Petros Mavros, uncredited. Greek fighter who is defeated by Silva. Velizar Piv as prison guard. Release. Theatrical. It was released in the United States on June 1st, 2010. Reception. Box office. The film grossed $282,548 in Lebanon and United Arab Emirates. Critical response. James Marsh of Screen Anarchy praised Florentine's direction for capturing the flow and the combinations of the innovative, exciting, and technically groundbreaking battles, and his cast of charismatic action stars, singling out Zeror for having a natural, eye-catching screen quality that's hard to ignore, concluding that, as someone who normally demands genuine drama from real characters along with his martial arts, I was overpowered, overwhelmed, and left battered and bleeding at the total mercy of this movie. Resistance is futile. Undisputed 3, Redemption Rules. Bill Gibron of DVD Talk gave note of the film being simplified cinema set up to achieve certain stock goals, concluding that Undisputed 3 promises nothing more than a series of well-filmed beatdowns and delivers on every account. It might not be rocket science, but it's not Rocky either. Instead of finesse, all we get here is fighting, and that's perfectly fine. Accolades. Undisputed 3 won Best Director Award and Best Fight Choreographer in the 2010 edition of Action Fest. Sequel. Main article, Undisputed franchise. According to Movie Cricket, Adkins confirmed that there will be a fourth installment to the Undisputed series. On May 29, 2014, when asked whether there would be an Undisputed 4, Adkins replied, "Yes, it is definitely something we are pursuing. We are working on the script at the moment, trying to get all the departments happy with what we are trying to do. It's taking longer than I want to be honest, but you know it is difficult financing these films. In this day and age, those type of straight-to-DVD films don't make the sort of money they used to make in the 90s, early 2000s. So it is a bit of a precarious business at the moment, and that is why it's taking so long. But we are definitely all trying to get it going, because we appreciate what following that character of Boyka has. And you know, I love playing that character, and I can't wait to return to him, and we've got some good ideas on where to take the character." Production had begun on Boyka, Undisputed, in June 2015, with Scott Adkins returning as Boyka. The plot involves the fighter, who is now free, attempting to go as a professional fighter when he accidentally kills someone in the ring. However, to make amends for what he has done, he must engage in a series of fights to save the wife of the man he killed. Shooting was completed in early August 2015 for a 2017 release date. Plot: Boyka is back. This time he is fighting in the first ever inter-prison tournament with one knee. Review, and so we come to part 3. Yuri Boyka is a broken man, now left cleaning toilets after getting his ass handed to him by George Chambers. He now has a limp after getting his leg damaged, and any thoughts he had of becoming the most complete fighter in the world are now gone. Or are they? This time we are introduced to Turbo, played by Mykel Shannon Jenkins, who brings a lighter touch to the story, but certainly not giving any less of a punch. He can kick plenty of ass, but his buddy banter with Boyka is hilarious, as Boyka remains humorless throughout. What could be cheesy works perfectly, and it shows how good the writing is that you now totally root for the guy who was the villain in the previous movie. You want Boyka to get back in the ring and kick some ass again and finally earn his freedom. Adkins once again excels in his iconic role as Boyka, and Mykel Shannon Jenkins brings a nice spark to the story too. The fights are choreographed just as well as part 2, and some big-budget filmmakers could learn from Florentine how to shoot a fight scene. The camera stays still, and we are actually allowed to watch the fighters show off their skills, which is always so much more impressive. The music is again perfect for the movie, and has some really pumping tracks during the fights. As I've said before, I love how in these two movies, you utterly fear the character of Boyka, as he is terrifying presence at first, but as the story progresses, we discover that he is a man of honor, and by the end of the story, we are 100% behind him all the way. Overall, Undisputed 3 is just utterly necessary if you enjoyed Part 2, the character arc of Boyka, the banter between him and Turbo, and fight scenes are all superbly entertaining. Well, unlike my first reviews of Undisputed and Undisputed 2 Last Man Standing, I'm perfectly happy with what I wrote when Undisputed 3 Redemption was first released. So you can follow that link for what the movie's about and why it's great. Plus my attempt to sell circa 2010 Ain't It Cool newsreaders on the works of Scott Adkins and Isaac Florentine, and the concept of DTV action in general. Still, on the occasion of Part 4 coming to American Video tomorrow, I wanted to revisit Part 3 for further analysis and appreciation. I'd never watched it back-to-back with Part 2 before. That really emphasizes the differences. Though I praised the J.J. Perry fight choreography in 2, Larnell Stovall's work here is something to behold. More fights, longer takes with more consecutive moves, different styles, more throws and groundwork, and capoeira courtesy of Lateef Crowder. As much as I love and don't want to take away from the classics like Kickboxer and Bloodsport that inspired movies like The Undisputeds, I think it's fair to say that the choreography and filming of martial arts sequences has gotten far more sophisticated since those days. But the appeal of these sequels is much more than just the great fights. They're highly entertaining stories of athletics among anti-heroes. Pretty broad characters, but with lots of little touches. When Crowder finishes pounding a guy's face and the ref calls for the doctor, and an old man in a lab coat is led into the cage, I really wonder what circumstances led to this poor guy being the doctor for an international prison fighting tournament. Either he fucked up his life bad, or some snake sweet-talked him into a hell of an interesting post-retirement gig. I love the beginning of sequels when you catch up with a character and they're in a different place in life. For example, at the start of Rambo 3, Rambo lives in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand and makes a living by stick fighting. Here, Boyka is in the same literal place that he was before, but he's gone from the champion who makes everyone stand up when he enters the room to the guy with the limp who they look right through. He's unrecognizable, buried behind a Robinson Crusoe mane and beard. See also The Chronicles of Riddick. The opening stretch of this one is top-notch. Gaga, Mark Ivanir, Schindler's List, Delta Force 3, the gangster who runs the fights, sees the disheveled man mopping the muddy floor and is taken aback when he realizes it's Boyka who made him so much money. Gaga transcends the standard asshole gangster character by showing sincere pity for Boyka and offering to get him a better cell. A genuine act of kindness or guilt, not a deal with strings attached. We know this because he doesn't believe he can get anything more out of this pathetic man with the knee injury. Boyka refuses his offer, but lets it be known that he wants to fight in the beautifully outlandish Prison Spets competition, International Prison Fighter Tournament. Gaga thinks he's crazy and starts rattling off the reasons why. What's going to happen in the tournament against the best fighters in the world? It's suicide, Boyka. You're in. A long pause. It is a suicide, isn't it? Gaga asks quietly. Sorry. The new champ Saikov, Esteban Cueto Fast 5, is plowing through competition, and who should pop up at ringside but Rip Van Boyka, fitting in about as well as the guy that eats the crickets in Hellraiser. In his cell, he keeps trying to strengthen his knee, the classic makeshift fitness equipment trope. But is it working? He knocks his bucket of water over. He's frustrated. He pulls off his crucifix necklace, goes over and finds something hidden under the corner of his mattress. Unwraps it. It's a razor blade. And this is my solitary complaint about this movie, that there's not a beat or two for us to look at that razor and contemplate whether Gaga is right, whether Boyka wants to kill himself, before a chunk of his hair falls and we realize that, phew, the blade is not to slit his wrist, but to trim his hair and beard because he's ready to return to the ring. Then you gotta love the way he challenges Saikov by throwing a whole bucket of water on his back while he's celebrating a victory. When Gaga says, let him fight, if that's what he wants, he deserves to go out with some dignity. He must think he's actually going to get killed in the ring, right? Because if he just got a normal, non-fatal ass-handing, I don't know if that would be called going out with some dignity. This is the first time in the movie that we've seen him with the trademark hair and goatee. He takes off his weathered jacket, shirt, and fingerless gloves, revealing the muscles and tattoos, returning to form. But every time they show his footwork, we see these ragged pants. Vagabond Boyka. But when he does this flip kick, we know he's still classic Boyka, or Bokia Plus even. At the tournament in Georgia, it becomes a buddy movie. Boyka has to work with an arrogant American called Turbo, Mykel Shannon Jenkins, Michael Jackson searching for Neverland, and it does not go well at first. Turbo keeps complaining, Boyka angers him with a dirty look, and eventually has to tell him to shut the fuck up. They get in a fight while chained together, and are punished with some time in literal holes. Turbo breaks down and exposes his vulnerability to the stoic Russia, as he calls him, panicking about rats and taking a shit. So when they work chained together again and are forced to cooperate, it grows into something of a friendship. I love when they start treating the work in the rock quarry, which is intended to wear them down, as their workout, adding push-ups and counting off rock lifts and pickaxe swings. Raul, Dolor Quinones, Marco Zaror, Redeemer, is another great villain for this series, though this time with no apparent sense of honor. When the competitors arrive at the Georgian prison, the warden, Hristo Shopov, Pontius Pilate, in The Passion of the Christ, gives them a speech about how no one will get special treatment and all will be treated equally, as his champ Dolor stands separately carrying a book of Federico Garcia Lorca poems and then is given the floor to lecture them. And whenever all the others work in the hot sun, Dolor is openly allowed to lounge in the shade. They even secretly bring him syringes full of heroin, or whatever drug he calls, my chocolata. Other than being a Spanish speaker, this is very Trumpian, how they flagrantly flaunt the favoritism while claiming it's not happening, daring everybody else to point out that the fucking sky is blue. At the time, Zaror had mostly played good-hearted, introverted heroes, so this crazed prick villain character was one of the early signs of his range as an actor. In my Undisputed revisit, I quoted Walter Hill, saying that he made the first movie where boxing wasn't a metaphor for anything. It struck me that this movie about underground fighting is kind of a metaphor for professional fighting. Gaga and Farnati, Robert Costanzo, Die Hard 2, as the mobsters betting on Gaga and Turbo, have their own subplot about trying to represent the interests of their fighters. They're outraged when they learn that the two have been forced into hard labor. They're acting as their managers, but they might be the type that are more loyal to the money than the people. At the end, when Boyka, for the end, is out and he starts walking faster and then running and a smile spreads across his face, it's the first time we've ever seen him smile in two movies. He saved it up for the right time, and it grows into a big laugh. What a joyful ending. Undisputed 2 and 3 are both worth frequent revisits. Both were even better than I remembered. When I watched 2, I felt like maybe it was my favorite of the series. But then, of course, I watched 3. If there's an area where 3 is clearly not as good, it's in using more of the rap songs, consistently weak in this series, and in not having Michael Jai White. But the deepening of the Boyka character is something really special for the genre. We never saw this treatment for Tong Po or Chong Li or even Drago. But I would have loved to. That the protagonists of 2nd and 3 were each the villain of the previous chapter really strengthens the theme of redemption, something very appropriate for a series taking place in correctional facilities. The movies promise that these guys can become better people without forsaking their talents for kicking and punching the holy living fuck out of others. Beware, this review contains spoilers. The next day, the tournament begins with Boyka, Dolor, Turbo, and Brazilian capoeira fighter Rodrigo Silva victorious in each of their matches. The 4 losing fighters, expecting to be transported back to their respective prisons, instead find themselves met with a firing squad that kills each of them. Meanwhile, Boyka and Turbo's rivalry finally reaches a tipping point when the two fight during their hard labor, and both are subsequently placed in solitary confinement. Gaga and Turbo's backer, Farnati, having learned of the treatment their fighters are receiving, confront the tournament's chief organizer, Rezo, who acknowledges that the tournament is indeed being fixed in Dolor's favor, and encourages both men to place their bet on him, assuring them that Dolor's victory can be guaranteed. Realizing that they only view their fighters as a means to the end of their money-making, both Gaga and Farnati agree. After being released from solitary confinement, Boyka and Turbo slowly develop an alliance, treating their hard labor as a means of training as they are deprived of food and their workload is increased. Turbo also revels to Boyka his past as a U.S. Marine and recommends holistic medicine to alleviate the pain symptoms of Boyka's knee injury. As the tournament continues, Boyka defeats Silva and, in stark contrast to his past conduct in the ring, helps his opponent to his feet and commends him on a good fight. Unfortunately for Silva, he too is murdered during his supposed transfer back to his own prison. Meanwhile, the prison staff take notice of Boyka and Turbo's efforts of turning their situation to their advantage, later cornering and savagely beating Turbo, knowing that the next fight will pit him against Dolor, with the winner to face Boyka in the final match. Seeing the effects of Turbo's beating, Boyka knows that Turbo doesn't stand a chance, and both men learn from another inmate of the firing squad that awaits the losing fighters. Although knowing that he is sacrificing his only shot at freedom while also aware that he will be kept alive to face Dolor, Boyka helps Turbo escape during their intense quarry labors. Boyka is captured and restrained during Turbo's escape and later learns of Gaga's betrayal. The film premiered at the first annual Action Fest in Asheville, North Carolina, 15 to 18th April 2010, where it won awards for Best Director and Best Fight Choreography. J.J. Loco Perry, the fight choreographer for the previous film, Undisputed 2, Last Man Standing, was unable to commit to Undisputed 3 due to a scheduling conflict and contacted Larnell Stovall to step into his shoes. Like many film nerds, I took the coming of a new decade as an excuse to list my top 100 favorite films of the 2010s. While writing it, I kept noticing how many films I had missed out on. Rather than binging frantically in the last weeks of the decade, I then decided to start a new project. In 2020, I would watch 100 movies from the past 10 years that I'd never seen before, because they passed me by, because I was too lazy to get to the cinema, because something trivial turned me off. I would also annotate the experience on this here Medium blog. So here we go, 100 films from the last decade, viewed roughly in chronological order. Undisputed 3 Redemption by Isaac Florentine. At the time, I probably didn't hear about this film at the time of its release, but I remember catching spontaneous mentions of Adkins and Florentine throughout the decade and always vaguely feeling like I should check their stuff out. My preferred modes of watching movies during the 2010s, though, were at the cinema or by buying Blu-rays from boutique labels, so it shouldn't come as a big surprise that I never did. Now, I'm certainly enthusiastic about checking this out. It's the kind of movie I want to like, because, well, what is the point of shitting on a DTV effort made by people who clearly love their work? That being said, I've watched plenty of action films that I enjoyed more in theory than in practice, and I would hate for this to turn out to be one of them. An interesting development in 21st century culture was the rehabilitation of 80s action cinema, as epitomized by JCVD and the Expendables franchise. Where did this come from? Nostalgia played a huge role, of course, but I also think that the obvious physicality of these musclemen struck a chord in an era of ever-increasing green screen and CGI. And then there was the age factor. Performers whose whole appeal centered around their physical prowess being presented in a way that showcased their mortality seemed particularly poignant. An outgrowth of this phenomenon, which in itself didn't last very long, as it became clear that Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and the rest hadn't become any better at managing their careers than they used to be, was a surge of interest in directors and performers keeping the spirit of 80s action alive. This movement expressed itself mostly through direct-to-video releases. Even the format felt quaint in an era that saw the last dying gasps of the video store, and focused on no-nonsense brawls and action with a connoisseur's touch. Isaac Florentine was quickly crowned the movement's main auteur, and Scott Adkins its biggest star. A popular opinion about action movies, especially those that focus more on hand-to-hand combat than chases and explosions, is that the plot doesn't matter. No one goes to these movies for storytelling. They go to see great fighters kick the living shit out of each other. This, I think, is only a half-truth. I'll accept that these movies have an element of physicality to them, which, as in silent comedy or in classic musicals, creates the film's most iconic moments. But as with those other genres I mentioned, I think the best examples of action films are those that manage to string a compelling story around the performances. Fights matter more when you care who wins and when you're given a reason why they're fighting. Which is not to say that Undisputed 3 Redemption should be judged by the standards of conventional drama. For starters, I didn't watch the first two of the series before firing this one up, something which I probably wouldn't do with a more story-based franchise. I knew the general premise of the Undisputed series, and I knew that Scott Adkins' character Boyka, originally an antagonist, had moved up the ranks to become the protagonist. This in itself is also charming. A franchise human enough to tinker with itself after seeing what works. Could you imagine something like this happening in, say, the micromanaged MCU? That's really all Undisputed 3 asked of me, too, and nothing in the movie felt weighed down by excessive continuity. We meet Boyka as he's hit rock bottom, a former fighting champ now cleaning toilets in a decrepit prison. One of the big issues of the film is that he's fucked his knee, and now any kind of physical exertion comes at the cost of immense physical pain. Frankly, the film could have been a bit more convincing on that front, as the only times we remember this are the ones where it's shoved into our face. As soon as Boyka decides to go up against the prison's champion, he cleans himself up, and the fresh face and oiled muscles that we're presented with don't exactly scream, "This man is doing very badly." Anyway, one jailhouse champion dispatched, and Boyka is abducted to a different prison in Georgia, where he's representing Mother Russia in an international championship of convict fighters. At first, the biggest source of irritation for our hero in this is Turbo, Mykel Shannon Jenkins, his wisecracking Afro-American rival. But gradually, as both fighters are subjected to hard labor and psychological pressures, they start to realize that, guess what? This illegal prison fighting ring thing might not be entirely on the up and up. It is, in fact, fixed so that the Colombian fighter, Marco Zaror, who's Chilean, wins. Undisputed 3 is a love story between two men. The film tackles this head-on by having the baddies gay-bait Boyka and Turbo, though it still doesn't make any kind of romantic relationship between them canon. Am I saying it's sexual? I guess what I'm saying is it can be, if you want it to. But whether you view it that way or not, the movie's main emotional relationship is clearly between Turbo and Boyka. And come to that, does it matter so much if you're fighting for your lover or fighting for your best friend? Either way, the contrast between the characters, Turbo flamboyant and talkative, Boyka austere and monosyllabic, certainly adds a lot to the movie's appeal. They are literally chained together for much of it, which immediately brings to mind the Stanley Kramer social issue movie The Defiant Ones, as well as its gender-swapped grindhouse remake, Black Mama, White Mama. And it's a surprisingly woke touch that, without giving too much away, it is the white guy who sacrifices something to get his friend's freedom in this one. The main focus of the hype around Florentine and Adkins is still the fights, though, and Undisputed 3 certainly doesn't disappoint on that front. The international flavor allows for some variety in fighting styles. The exuberant capoeira Latif Crowder busts out was easily my favorite bit of the first round of fights, and Ilram Choi's kung fu is entertaining enough that I was sad to see him dispatched so quickly. Action fans often complain about modern fight scenes either opting for shaky cam or excessive editing, usually to cover up the fact that their stars aren't up to the job. Not so Florentine. He does resort to editing when a fight is short and there to move the plot along. But for the highlights, we have long shots, which cannot be called static only because they serenely follow the action as it moves along. He does have some annoying ticks elsewhere, though. Florentine is exceedingly fond of the quick zoom in, usually accompanied by a whoosh sound, to show you that a character is important or that something relevant has just happened. A device I generally find tacky, but in Undisputed 3, it gets used to the point of self-parody. Also popular, though less objectionable, is the blurry losing consciousness shot. It also bears stating that, while Minos Matsas' score hits a good balance between ominous and cheesy, the soundtrack is far too weighed down with post-Lose Yourself landfill guitar-driven hip-hop. Perhaps in decades to come, that will end up sounding as glorious as 80s action AOR rock sounds now, but somehow I doubt it. For the most part, Undisputed 3 plays its fairly ludicrous story straight, but the movie is not devoid of a sense of humor. Much of that is down to main baddie Zaror, who obligingly chews scenery throughout. His character reads Lorca and shoots up cocaine, all while looking perfectly demented. He's the kind of evil whose presence is noted as soon as he walks into the room, disturbance in the Force style. Another interesting touch is that, once the whole scheme falls apart, the Georgian prison guards still feel a need to provide a bureaucratic justification for why they're refusing Boyka his due, which feels like a very post-Soviet attitude. I had a lot of fun with this. Recommended. Signs it was made in 2010. Can you imagine a Russian protagonist in an American action movie in 2020? I doubt any faction of the US population would stand for it. There's also a running gag about Boyka's manager Gaga, Mark Ivanir, going vegetarian, which is treated more exotically than even the biggest macho dudes would look at it now. 4 years after impressing martial arts fans with Undisputed 2 Last Man Standing, director Isaac Florentine returns with the long-awaited third chapter in the prison fighter films. This time, paying respects to the themes of the first two, British superkicker Scott Adkins returns to form as Russian mixed martial arts fighter Yuri Boyka. After a crushing defeat by George Iceman Chambers, Boyka is now a toilet cleaner in the basement of the prison with a bum knee. He has learned his one-time backer, Russian mobster Gaga, has backed another fighter. When a tournament involving the world's top prisoners is coming up in the border of Georgia, Boyka decides to see if he has it in him. He trains and soon proves himself to enter the tournament when he easily defeats the prison's current champion. Boyka heads to Georgia, where the first prison sports competition is being held. The prize for winning, a pardon from the prison system and a chance to be a free man. The competition is fierce, including brash American boxer Turbo, capoeira exponent Silva, North Korean taekwondo fighter Lim, and the heavy favorite Colombian drug runner and killer Raul Dolor Quinones. As the tournament commences, a dark secret involving the fighters eliminated from the tournament is known. And now, rivals will be forced to team up to not just fight for freedom, but for survival as well. As a longtime fan of martial arts films, Hollywood had seemed for this reviewer somewhat troublesome when it comes to the recent wave of fight films. While the elements of mixed martial arts, or MMA, seemed imminent, the films mainly with that element seemed choppier, if not really bad. That was until 2006, Undisputed 2 Last Man Standing was released. The sequel to the 2002 prison boxing film made the drastic turn to MMA thanks to the sequel's helmer, karate expert, and action film director Isaac Florentine. It was his frequent collaborator, British martial arts ace Scott Adkins, who drove the film with his unique blend of ground fighting and acrobatic kicking skills that made it one of the best American martial arts films since the glory days of the 80s to the mid-90s. All of that is about to change, as this film may in fact be the best of not just the sequels, but the best of the series as a whole. Scott Adkins, coming fresh off his last collaboration with Florentine, 2009's Ninja, and his turn as Weapon the One in X-Men Origins Wolverine, is in top form again as MMA fighter Boyka. While he wasn't seen as a bad guy in the last film, he wanted to prove he was the best fighter. Here, he brings that back and more as well. Boyka realizes he has a purpose in life, but is unsure what it is. As the subtitle indicates, for Boyka it is truly a chance at redemption. The supporting cast of fighters does a great job as well. What many will find interesting is the bond that gradually forms between Boyka and brash American boxer Turbo, played by Mykel Shannon Jenkins. This is noticeable when Boyka sees a tattoo of Turbo's kids on his chest, but on a subconscious level, it could be because Boyka's last defeat was by that of a boxer. Perhaps, instead of Boyka's one-time demand of evolution as a supreme warrior, he has a newfound respect for the various styles of martial arts. In their limited on-screen time as fillers, Ilram Choi and Lateef Crowder make the best use of their martial arts skills in respectively Taekwondo and Capoeira. Playing the prison champion favorite this time is Chilean martial arts fighter Marco Zaror. A former stuntman, Zaror wowed martial arts fans with his roles in Kiltro and Mirage Man. Here, Zaror plays Raul Dolor Quinones, the champion at the prison where the tournament is being held. While he doesn't have as many fight scenes as Adkins or Jenkins, Zaror is a showcase in his own right when he does fight. While press photos obviously indicate that Zaror and Adkins fight in the finals of the tournament, martial arts fans who have anticipated this matchup will surely not be disappointed. The credit for the martial arts fight scenes goes this time to Larnell Stovall, a member of the 8711 stunt team responsible for the good recent A-list action films Never Back Down and Ninja Assassin. Stovall has definitely did his homework, and combined with Florentine's direction and Ross Clarkson's cinematography, used the cast's martial arts skills to perhaps the highest of expectations. The result? Winning the Best Fight Choreographer award at the 2010 Action Fest Film Festival. If you want to see a good, make that awesome fight film, Undisputed 3, Redemption is truly one of the greatest American martial arts ever made. A stellar cast, developed storyline, and some of the best fight scenes this side of the hemisphere make this an instant action classic. Boyka returns to break more bones in this supercharged sequel. He turns from zero to hero as he slowly recovers from his leg being snapped by Michael Jai White at the end of the previous movie. Reduced to a hermit-like existence in a Russian jail with no chance of parole, he steps back into the world of organized prison fighting, it's a thing, and is marched off to Georgia at the behest of some rich fixers who run a high-stakes international fight tournament. Prisoners are recruited from all corners of the globe in shades of Van Damme's The Quest, with the losers being sent away and executed. In their spare time, the prisoners are kept busy breaking rocks and getting their muscles all wet and shiny. If anyone can add extra dimensions to a murderous thug like Yuri Boyka, then it's the charming Scott Adkins, who provides the inmate with a sympathetic human side via brewing bromance with his fellow inmate and workout buddy, Turbo, Mykel Shannon Jenkins. Their bond becomes quite touching. Boyka suffers from an inferiority complex regarding his injured knee, so Turbo gives him some flowers to ease the pain. The pleasantries don't extend to the boxing ring, however, which is the setting for Boyka's inevitable throwdown with a massive jacked-up Colombian fighter, played by Chilean action star Marco Zaror. Adkins is excellent in his most defining role, relishing every opportunity to kick heads in an increasingly elaborate series of bewildering contortions. Me saying that Isaac Florentine's Undisputed 3 Redemption is the best film in the Undisputed series may mean a lot to those familiar with the previous installments. But, since they were all released immediately on DVD, it is most likely that most people who know about them only by hearsay will not pay much attention to my statement. So, let me express my opinion. Undisputed 3 is a highly entertaining example of action cinema, incorporating all the best elements of the jock era without excessive bombast or modesty, and combining them with the kind of, in places, excellent fight choreography that I have not seen in American films, at least the last 10 years. Is this a B movie? Oh yes, definitely, but this is an amazing B. The film is self-contained, thoughtful, and practically flawless. Scott Adkins played the role of Russian prisoner Boyka for the second time, currently heavily burdened by a knee injury received in the finale of Undisputed 2. No longer a feared prison fighter, his status has been downgraded, and he is now only fit to clean toilets. But when a new fighting tournament begins in prison with an international scope and the participation of the best prison fighters from around the globe, lured by the promise of freedom for the winner, Boyka will have to restore his position and fight for a place in the tournament. Of course, he succeeds, and he is sent to Georgia, where he meets with his opponents, an arrogant American, Brazilian capoeira master, North Korean taekwondo master, Greek, Horvath, and those who should be feared the most are the Colombians. Naturally, there was a catch. While other fighters are forced to endure hard labor, the Colombian fighter, who is supported by the management of the prison where the tournament is held, is allowed to live in relative luxury. While others are not provided with even standard food, the Colombian is personally delivered drugs by the prison warden himself. If you've ever seen tournament movies, you'll understand what we're talking about. There is nothing unique in Undisputed 3. In terms of plot, everything has already been repeated many, many times. But given this kind of format, it's not about novelty, it's about execution, and Florentine pulls it off extremely admirably. The character development is strong enough, the pacing is energetic, the script provides enough humor to make us realize that all the people involved in the making of the film undoubtedly knew what kind of film they were making. And Adkins, as Boyk, the villain from the previous part, appears here as a gruff anti-hero seeking personal redemption. All elements of the storyline work as expected, which leads us straight to where the film really stands out. To the battles. Florentine filled the cast with top-level international fighters. Adkins still hasn't received the recognition or respect he deserves for the work he's done, but this film should soon correct that situation. He has a powerful physical presence on screen, he is extremely talented, and is able to perform moves that a man of his size simply wouldn't be able to pull off. His adversaries include a couple of familiar faces, including Latif Crowder, you know him from Tom Yum Gong, as a Brazilian fighter, and Chilean Marco Zaror as a vicious Colombian fighter named Dolor. Zaror, along with Adkins and his latent Boyka charisma, deserves full credit for his delightful performance as Dolor, his first English-language role. Goggle eyes, an evil grin at the ready, and dance steps mixed in with workouts for no reason other than the fact that villains like dancing. Zaror looks so abnormal that it might seem as if he has been spitting for weeks the remnants of most of the script that he chewed in this film. This is a whole new side of Zaror as a performer, and he is just incredibly entertaining in his role. But he's even more entertaining as a fighter. Remember the name Larnell Stovall, the fight choreographer. In my opinion, you will be hearing about him a lot in the coming years. He is a true expert in his field. Of course, he is a world-class master 100%. No wires, no cheating, only a full-scale attack, consisting of brutal, epically created fights in which the performance of all the fighters is clearly visible. Stovall clearly knew what Crowder, Zaror, and Adkins were capable of, and all three, thanks to him, showed their best side. Adkins, for a man of his size, has incredible acrobatic skills, as does Zaror, and when they both eventually come together in the ring, the result lives up to your every expectation. The fight came out with scope, power, technique, and acrobatics, with one of the most unforgettable endings to the fights of recent days. Of course, Stovall's work would have been in vain with poor direction, but Florentine once again proved himself to be one of the best directors on the planet when it comes to directing action films. The film, Undisputed 3, was a success and, more importantly, fully met expectations, giving the audience 100% viewing pleasure. Boyka returns to break more bones in this supercharged sequel. He turns from zero to hero as he slowly recovers from his leg being snapped by Michael Jai White at the end of the previous movie. Reduced to a hermit-like existence in a Russian jail with no chance of parole, he steps back into the world of organized prison fighting. It's a thing, and is marched off to Georgia at the behest of some rich fixers who run a high-stakes international fight tournament. Prisoners are recruited from all corners of the globe in shades of Van Damme's The Quest, with the losers being sent away and executed. In their spare time, the prisoners are kept busy breaking rocks and getting their muscles all wet and shiny. If anyone can add extra dimensions to a murderous thug like Yuri Boyka, then it's the charming Scott Adkins, who provides the inmate with a sympathetic human side via a brewing bromance with his fellow inmate and workout buddy, Turbo, Mykel Shannon Jenkins. Their bond becomes quite touching. Boyka suffers from an inferiority complex regarding his injured knee, so Turbo gives him some flowers to ease the pain. The pleasantries don't extend to the boxing ring, however, which is the setting for Boyka's inevitable throwdown with a massive, jacked-up Colombian fighter, played by Chilean action star Marco Zaror. Adkins is excellent in his most defining role, relishing every opportunity to kick heads in an increasingly elaborate series of bewildering contortions. Director Isaac Florentine and star Scott Adkins team up for their fifth collaboration to deliver what is arguably both their best film to date and one of the top fight films to come out of America. A few years back, the two delivered Undisputed 2, an excellent mixture of prison drama and martial arts action. The film featured outstanding fight scenes and gave action stars Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White meaty lead roles to sink their teeth into, as well as ample opportunity to flex their martial arts skills. Adkins returns for the third entry to once again portray banged-up bad guy Yuri Boyka, and Undisputed 3 builds on everything that was great in Part 2, the characters and the action, to deliver a grade-A fight flick. Yuri Boyka was one of the highlights of Undisputed 2, a snarling, bone-breaking bad guy brilliantly embodied by a beefed-up, tattooed Scott Adkins. As Undisputed 3 opens, he is now a broken man and a shell of the former fighter he used to be. No longer the marauding monster he was, Boyka is healing his wounded knee and pride wanting to regain his honor as a fighter, but this time do it properly. No cheating, winning by strength and honor alone. He quickly competes and wins against the reigning champion in his prison and is transported to another maximum security prison, where he will compete in a tournament against prison fighters from around the world with the ultimate prize on offer. The winner goes free. But with big money at stake, fights being rigged, and a deadly drugged enhanced super fighter, Marco Zaror, to beat, Boyka's path to redemption is a tough and fight-filled quest. Okay, first off, the film doesn't do anything too different from Part 2, other than flesh out the character of Boyka and returning character Gaga, who backs Boyka in the tournament. So the film is much the same as before. Nothing really new to see here, but when it's done this well, and done this well on a low budget, it matters not, as Boyka is a great character to spend more time with, and the film is crammed to the rafters with fight tournament action. In this entry, Boyka may be going good, but he's lost none of his trademark gruffness and fierce fighting moves. It's a wise move to bring the character back and take him on a different journey, and it's great to see Adkins let loose with one of his best roles. Perfectly balancing the acting with the action, the guy excels in both arenas and is backed up by longtime collaborator Florentine, who wraps the whole film up in a tight, slick, and engaging package. A good chunk of the film and action is also set in a quarry where the inmates do hard labor and plot escapes, which gives the film a nice visual that sets it apart from Undisputed 2. Yet what the film really delivers, and why most will want to see it, is the action. Florentine knows how to shoot, stage, and cut action, while Adkins is arguably one of the best screen fighters around right now. If you thought Undisputed 2 could have done with a bit more action, then Undisputed 3 makes up for this with a surfeit of wickedly choreographed and sustained fight scenes that set the film well above the standard fight flick. Florentine and choreographer Larnell Stovall put together some incredibly fluid and full-on fight scenes. Much of the action is one-on-one based tournament fighting as a series of fighters take each other on using different forms of martial combat. Adkins seems to get better in every action film he does, especially in those directed by Florentine, and tops his fight work seen in Undisputed 2 and Ninja. He is also backed by an array of quality fighters, including Lateef Crowder, Warrior King, Mykel Shannon Jenkins, Esteban Cueto, Ilram Choi, and Kiltro star Marco Zaror, who makes his American film debut. Special mention should go to Zaror, who makes for a great bad guy, almost equaling Adkins' Boyka, and is simply awesome in the fight scenes, many of which he gets to take part in. With wide, long camera takes, well-timed editing, and crisp choreography, the fight scenes in Undisputed 3 are among the best. Note should go to big-budget Hollywood, who seems to want to destroy action cinema by over-editing all action into a chaotic mess. This is how action fight scenes are done. The plot may be just an excuse to service a series of breakneck fight scenes, though there is some excellent character interplay in between all the beatdowns. The accents may wobble a bit, and the film does try a bit hard with all the F-bombs it seems to want to drop, but there is no doubt Undisputed 3 is an excellent fight flick. Director Isaac Florentine and star Scott Adkins team up for their fifth collaboration to deliver what is arguably both their best film to date and one of the top fight films to come out of America. A few years back, the two delivered Undisputed 2, an excellent mixture of prison drama and martial arts action. The film featured outstanding fight scenes and gave action stars Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White meaty lead roles to sink their teeth into, as well as ample opportunity to flex their martial arts skills. Adkins returns for the third entry to once again portray banged-up bad guy Yuri Boyka. And Undisputed 3 builds on everything that was great in Part 2, the characters and the action, to deliver a grade-A fight flick. Yuri Boyka was one of the highlights of Undisputed 2, a snarling, bone-breaking bad guy brilliantly embodied by a beefed-up, tattooed Scott Adkins. As Undisputed 3 opens, he is now a broken man and a shell of the former fighter he used to be. No longer the marauding monster he was, Boyka is healing his wounded knee and pride wanting to regain his honor as a fighter, but this time do it properly. No cheating, winning by strength and honor alone. He quickly competes and wins against the reigning champion in his prison and is transported to another maximum security prison, where he will compete in a tournament against prison fighters from around the world with the ultimate prize on offer. The winner goes free. But with big money at stake, fights being rigged, and a deadly drugged enhanced super fighter, Marco Zaror, to beat, Boyka's path to redemption is a tough and fight-filled quest. Okay, first off, the film doesn't do anything too different from Part 2, other than flesh out the character of Boyka and returning character Gaga, who backs Boyka in the tournament. So the film is much the same as before. Nothing really new to see here, but when it's done this well, and done this well on a low budget, it matters not, as Boyka is a great character to spend more time with, and the film is crammed to the rafters with fight tournament action. In this entry, Boyka may be going good, but he's lost none of his trademark gruffness and fierce fighting moves. It's a wise move to bring the character back and take him on a different journey, and it's great to see Adkins let loose with one of his best roles. Perfectly balancing the acting with the action, the guy excels in both arenas and is backed up by longtime collaborator Florentine, who wraps the whole film up in a tight, slick, and engaging package. A good chunk of the film and action is also set in a quarry where the inmates do hard labor and plot escapes, which gives the film a nice visual that sets it apart from Undisputed 2. Yet what the film really delivers, and why most will want to see it, is the action. Florentine knows how to shoot, stage, and cut action, while Adkins is arguably one of the best screen fighters around right now. If you thought Undisputed 2 could have done with a bit more action, then Undisputed 3 makes up for this with a surfeit of wickedly choreographed and sustained fight scenes that set the film well above the standard fight flick. Florentine and choreographer Larnell Stovall put together some incredibly fluid and full-on fight scenes. Much of the action is one-on-one based tournament fighting as a series of fighters take each other on using different forms of martial combat. Adkins seems to get better in every action film he does, especially in those directed by Florentine, and tops his fight work seen in Undisputed 2 and Ninja. He is also backed by an array of quality fighters, including Latif Crowder, Warrior King, Mykel Shannon Jenkins, Esteban Cueto, Ilram Choi, and Kiltro star Marco Zaror, who makes his American film debut. Special mention should go to Zaror, who makes for a great bad guy, almost equaling Adkins' Boyka, and is simply awesome in the fight scenes, many of which he gets to take part in. With wide, long camera takes, well-timed editing, and crisp choreography, the fight scenes in Undisputed 3 are among the best. Note should go to big-budget Hollywood, who seems to want to destroy action cinema by over-editing all action into a chaotic mess. This is how action fight scenes are done. The plot may be just an excuse to service a series of breakneck fight scenes, though there is some excellent character interplay in between all the beatdowns. The accents may wobble a bit, and the film does try a bit hard with all the F-bombs it seems to want to drop, but there is no doubt Undisputed 3 is an excellent fight flick. 8 brutal prisoners from around the world converge in a Georgian prison to engage in brutal fights to the almost death with the promise of freedom for the victor. Wealthy men and corrupt authority figures will wager on the outcome, but one man has decided to fight back. Sound original? Of course not, but I would argue by default that Undisputed 3 is the godfather of the prisoner's fight to the death subgenre. It's competently acted. It's always good to see Robert Costanzo. Looks gorgeous thanks to the Red One camera, simply plotted, and contains just enough impressively choreographed fight scenes. The real reason to see this straight-to-DVD Blu-ray title is, of course, the brawling, and it does not disappoint. Compared to the sort of brawling we see in Death Warrior and other MMA garbage, fight choreographer Larnell Stovall comes off looking like Yuen Wu Ping. The fight scenes are varied, painful, and genuinely engaging to watch. Most importantly, director Isaac Florentine, who cut his teeth directing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episodes in the 1990s, shoots said action beats in wide shots and long takes, often at a three-chord bird's-eye angle, which allows us to see both combatants at the same time. The film is what it is, but it's a surprisingly watchable entry in a subgenre that I generally have little to no interest in. It's a surprisingly high-quality direct-to-DVD Blu-ray action picture. As noted above, the picture quality is rather gorgeous. While much of the film is set in dark, grungy prison sets, the level of detail would be highly impressive for a big studio release, let alone a low-budget DVD title. The colors pop whenever the fighters actually step into the ring. I hesitate to say it, but the Red One camera, in some ways, may be superior to traditional film stock. Especially when dealing with detail and robust colors, the Gamer Blu-ray looked jaw-droopingly vivid. Once the technology becomes just a bit cheaper, we may finally see the end of cruddy-looking direct-to-DVD titles once and for all. The sound, English 5.1 DTS HD Master Audio, is not all that special, mainly because the occasionally loud rap music occasionally drowns out the sound effects and dialogue. But, to be honest, I had English subtitles on anyway, have to keep the volume lower so as to not wake the sleeping baby, so my experience may differ from yours. There are no extras on this disc, not even a scene selection. The main menu offers Play Movie and Setup, and that's it. The title comes packaged as a Blu-ray DVD combo set, for whatever that's worth. Oddly enough, the film is priced quite a bit higher than the norm, with the DVD retailing for $28 and the Blu-ray selling for $36. Still, as a rental, the film delivers on all counts for those who enjoy a little B-movie trash served up with a genuine attempt at quality. The visuals are gorgeous, and the fight scenes absolutely deliver. Undisputed 3, Redemption is a slight breath of fresh air for both the direct-to-DVD market and the mixed martial arts action genre. In a category where pretty bad is par for the course, Undisputed 3 is not bad. Oh, that was hurt. Who can survive? It was a lot of hullabaloo around Undisputed 3, partly because of not-so-quality previous project from Adkins Florentine named The Ninja, and partly just about Boyka character. From the first minutes, Florentine flings us to the center of the ring, where fighters knock the nonsense out of each other. Location is Chornya Cholmy, Russia, maximum security prison. And here we can see become overgrown and religious Boyka, good only for cleaning toilets. Want to say that it becomes popular for good fighters to take religion for some reason, just remember Ali, and nowadays popular MMA fighter Fedor. He trains in some village under supervision of some priest. But let's get back to the ring. So Boyka is cleaning up the prison, while underground businessmen trying to arrange the tournament of the best convicted fighters from all over the world, PFC. Boyka's request for parole is denied, so he decided to show everybody how to kick ass in his best manner, even with one knee. Working on his shape with the help of wooden pail with water, he meets skinny criminal who offers him to participate in tournament and make a very good money. Have to say, Florentine was in a very good mood when filming this stuff because all actors talking with terribly strong Russian accent, even Adkins. Come on, Isaac. Not everybody talks with such a strong accent. Most of people work on it and spend a lot of money to hide it. Boyka defeated the local champ in few minutes and heading to hell in Georgia. I have heard a lot about Chilean martial artist, actor, and stuntman Marco Zaror and expected to see a real deal, but wasn't impressed of his role in Undisputed 3. Sorry, Marco, but if you want to play tough bad guy, don't dance even if you won the award for Best Overall Stunt by a Stuntman in 2004 and shared it with J.J. Perry. And what we have in Georgia, 8 fighters represent different styles from Taekwondo to Capoeira. Countries are North Korea, Croatia, Greece, France, Russia, Brazil, USA, and Colombia. Capoeira is very popular today and looks great on camera, so later I will tell you about the first Capoeira movie from Brazil, named Besudo. And again, we have got an opportunity to see opposition of Russia and USA. How without this? The talkative American was driving me crazy half of movie, and I was not alone. Even Boyka said, "Shut your mouth." But to my surprise, after few tiffs, they became friends. I was impressed with fighting choreography of Larnell Stovall, the former world and international champion in fighting, weapons, and forms. Boyka showed very good MMA skills, and probably it was the right decision to cover up his problems with knee. American fighter played by Mykel Shannon Jenkins looks very good. I liked his trick with elbows during a fight. Sum up, I have to say, I like this movie, and Florentine is growing as a filmmaker from film to film. Keep it up, Isaac. We'll be waiting for your next movie. Oh, by the way, Florentine paid his respect to the first underground fighting movie, Bloodsport. You probably remember the scene when a cleaner is tidying up the ring with the broom, so don't miss the same scene, Undisputed 3. Seems to me, martial arts movies become very popular in 2010, but only few of them deserve sequels like Undisputed, Tony Jaa's Ong Bak 3 the movie, and Old School Karate Kid 2010 movie. The follow-up to surprise hit Undisputed 2 is a near-flawless martial arts film that doesn't concern itself with an overcomplicated plot and showcases mind-boggling fight sequences. Story picks up with Uri Boyka in prison recovering from his knee injury incurred during the second film. His goal, to fight in a competition that is similar to Jail Olympics in the ex-Soviet Republic of Georgia. The plot is just an excuse to stage some of the most visceral action scenes in memory. The fight tournament subgenre high watermark is Enter the Dragon, or arguably Bloodsport, leaving in their wake hundreds of cheap knockoffs that have littered DVD shelves for decades. However, Undisputed 3 transcends its limited budget and is on par with, if not better than, those previously mentioned classics. Fight choreographer Larnell Stovall and director Isaac Florentine have infused the film with a unique blend of action, some Hong Kong flavor, and a touch of Sergio Leone. Highlighted by a lively cast, especially Scott Adkins' sizzling star performance and Mykel Jenkins' solid work. Their budding friendship is the heart of the film and exposes the human dimension in both fighters. A scene in which both men are locked in solitary confinement and have only each other to talk to is beautifully acted and powerful. Adkins is a chameleon. He deftly handles the dramatic and physical requirements of the role. He has the charisma and physique of a young Jean-Claude Van Damme and top-notch acting chops. Also noteworthy in a supporting role is the enlivened Mark Ivanir as the deliciously slimy money man, Gaga. Having been a child of the 80s, I grew up with the Norris, Seagal, Van Damme action epics of the time. I was indoctrinated into kung fu cinema at a very young age, and it's a guilty pleasure of mine to this day. Unfortunately, that also means that I've sat through a lot of straight-to-DVD junk over the last few decades. Little gems like Undisputed 3 restore my faith in the genre. The film is part buddy picture, part fight flick, and part prison film, complete with a sadistic warden. The fight choreography and stunt work is simply awesome, fueled by a blazing pace and good musical score. The third movie in the Undisputed series, this installment features Uri Boyka as the protagonist after he got his leg and pride broken from his previous adventure. Having recently healed from these wounds, Boyka returns to the ring and enters a prison tournament where fighters from all over the world compete for the prize of winning their freedom. There he butts heads with a loud-mouthed American boxer named Turbo. Uncomfortably reminded of Chambers, Boyka clashes with Turbo repeatedly. However, eventually they begin to grow on each other, until they eventually unite against Raul Dolor Quiñones to beat him in the fixed tournament. It was mostly lauded as a worthy sequel to Undisputed 2 Last Man Standing, marked, as was the last one, by incredible choreography that was unaided by CGI, wires, or stunt doubles. What's interesting about the Undisputed series is its switching up of protagonists. In the second film, Boyka, Adkins, was actually the bad guy, who had his leg broken by George Iceman Chambers in the film's climax. But he was something of a heroic antagonist. Boyka had beaten Chambers earlier on, but insisted on a rematch after discovering his opponent had been given spiked water to drink. Still, there can't be many franchises where the villain in one entry becomes the hero of the next. Yet, here we are. with a humbled Boyka now limping around the bowels of his Russian prison, cleaning toilets and slowly rehabilitating his leg. That accomplished, he becomes his country's representative in the Prison Spets competition, PSC. This pits the 8 best jailed fighters from around the world in a tournament, with the winner gaining their freedom. It's organized by mob boss Gaga Ivanir, but the hot favorite is Colombian champion Raul Dolor Quiñones. Indeed, the fix is in once more to make sure he prevails and the right bets get paid out. To make sure Quiñones wins his semifinal, his opponent, American Turbo Jenkins, for whom Boyka has developed a grudging respect, gets a pre-bout beatdown. This offends Boyka's sense of fair play, and he helps Turbo to escape rather than face death in a bout he can't win. This sets up the inevitable bout between Russia and Colombia as the PSC final. It's almost all thoroughly predictable, and feels like a throwback to a simpler time when martial arts films had plots that would barely trouble the edges of a beer mat. The ambition there is low, and the film carries out the task of converting Boyka into the hero, largely by ignoring him ever having been anything else. Still, I can't deny it worked for me. My not having seen the first Undisputed and finding the second not very interesting probably helped make the transition here. The relationship between Boyka and Turbo is quite nicely developed, though, going from icy to genuine friendship and loyalty. You are not here for the touching emotional drama, though. You are here for merciless beatdowns, and the film delivers there with excellent choreography. I must admit, I could probably have done without the frequent changes in frame rate. Sometimes it feels excessively undercranked, feeling sped up to the point of cartoony, which I'm not a fan of in realistic fights. Then Florentine will switch to slow-mo, and in general, I felt this technique made it harder to appreciate the participants' true skill. I also thought the best fight was the one outside the ring. Boyka and Turbo took on some guards. That offered a bit more scope for invention. However, while this is one of those films which may not set out to do much, it does so with solid competence and delivers a more than adequate amount of entertainment. It's certainly easy to see why it kicked Adkins' career on an upward trajectory. Undisputed 2, Last Man Standing was arguably one of the best martial art action films I've come across in the last decade. Although it went largely overlooked, the combination of Mykel Jai White and Scott Adkins brought about a perfect storm of screen fighting that really hadn't been seen before. An up-and-coming Adkins really cut loose, and the film, for all intensive purposes, was choreographed beautifully when it came to camera angles and very complex fight maneuvers. This was largely due to 2 guys: action director Florentine, who is at the helm for Part 3 as well, and who is the man behind the camera of many of Adkins's martial art bonanzas, including Jean-Claude Van Damme's The Shepherd, Border Patrol, and the virtually unknown Ninja. Consequently, he just won an award for Undisputed 3 back in April at Action Fest as Best Director. The other guy responsible for this crazy barrage of awesome action cinema is Larnell Stovall, the film's stunt and action coordinator, who just so happened to take home the award for Best Action Choreography at Action Fest. It was certainly an overdue tip of the hat to a man that's been lending his skills to some of the best action the States have produced in decades, including Mykel Jai White's Blood and Bone and Black Dynamite. And he's even dipping into the more popular arenas of television, doing stunts on the critically acclaimed HBO show, Treem. The only problem I have with the film is the fact that Florentine decided to do a lot of the stunts in slow motion shots. I don't mind a little bit of speed alteration for action's sake, but doing it as much as we see in the film kinda takes away from the pace of the fights. The parts that are supposed to be quick and brutal end up taking longer and take the surprise away from the action. However, I do appreciate the lack of visual aids, i.e., wires or CGI, except for one kick that couldn't avoid its use, which really show how good of athletes these guys really are. I can't talk enough about how superb the action was in the film. Some great actors signed on for this one, including the Brazilian capoeira master, Latif Crowder, Korean taekwondo master, Ilram Choi, and Chilean martial arts sensation, Marco Zaror. Latif first caught my eye with his fighting skills in Tony Jaa's Tom Yum Goong, The Protector, and as part of the Zero Gravity team, his skills are being called upon more and more, currently set to play the iconic role of Eddie Gordo in the upcoming Tekken movie. Latif gives the audience a lot to marvel at, keeping his movements practical instead of the flashy dance elements of typical capoeira, so that we believe he's actually in a prison fight. Ilram Choi, as the Korean fighter, gets the early match against Marco Zaror's character, where we see one of the more exciting aerial fight scenes in the movie. Even though we only get to see him fight once, it's quite a spectacle. Plus, we get to see more of Zaror. I hadn't heard much about this guy until now, but he's evidently been making big waves as the newest action star from Chile in movies such as Mandrill, and he was also honored at Action Fest as an emerging star. His moves were absolutely phenomenal and certainly rivaled the skills of anyone else in film. Adkins and Zaror were definitely the two best high flyers in this one, but we can't forget about Mykel Shannon Jenkins, a man that I've never really heard of before this film either, but he fit the bill for his role nicely. His boxing skills were well-tuned for his fights, and Florentine made him look almost as good as Michael Jai White did in his boxing scenes for Undisputed 2. Director Isaac Florentine, who cut his teeth directing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episodes in the 1990s, shoots, said action beats in wide shots and long takes, often at a 3-4 bird's-eye angle, which allows us to see both combatants at the same time. The film is what it is, but it's a surprisingly watchable entry. In a subgenre that I generally have little to no interest in, it's a surprisingly high-quality direct-to DVD Blu-ray action picture, as noted above. The picture quality is rather gorgeous. While much of the film is set in dark, grungy prison sets, the level of detail would be highly impressive for a big studio release, let alone a low-budget DVD title. The colors pop. Whenever the fighters actually step into the ring, I hesitate to say it, but the Red One camera, in some ways, may be superior to traditional film stock, especially when dealing with detail and robust colors. The Gamer Blu-ray looked jaw-droppingly vivid. Once the technology becomes just a bit cheaper, we may finally see the end of cruddy-looking direct-to-DVD titles. Once and for all, the sound English 5.1 DTS HD Master. Audio is not all that special, mainly because the occasionally loud rap music occasionally drowns out the sound, effects, and dialogue. But to be honest, I had English subtitles on. Anyway, to keep the volume lower so as to not wake the sleeping baby. So my experience may differ from yours. There are no extras on this disc, not even a scene selection. The main menu offers play, moving, and setup, and that's it. The title comes packaged as a Blu-ray DVD combo set for whatever that's worth, oddly enough. The film is priced quite a bit higher than the norm, with the DVD retailing for $28 and the Blu-ray selling for $36. Still, as a rental, the film delivers on all counts for those who enjoy a little B-movie trash served up with a genuine attempt at quality. The visuals are gorgeous, and the fight scenes absolutely deliver. Undisputed 3 Redemption is a slight breath of fresh air for both the direct-to-DVD market and the mixed martial arts action genre, in a category where Pretty Bads is par for the course. Undisputed 3 is not bad. This film, directed by Florentine, written by David N. White, produced by Israel Ringel, starring Scott Adkins, Mykel Shannon Jenkins, Mark Ivanir, Risto Saish, Robert Castano, Marco Z, cinematography, Ross W. Clarkson, edited by C. Raz, music by Minus. Matsy's production company, New Image, distributed by Warner Home Video Release. Dates April 17th, 2010 in Action Fest, June 1st. 2010 in United States, running time 96 minutes, country United States language. English box office, $285,900. If you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.